Welcome to Crafty Beach. This is Julie. Today I have 7 easy 5-minute spring DIYs for you using supplies from the Dollar Tree. Here's a sneak peek of what I came up with. It just screams spring to me, and I really hope you like these DIYs today. Okay, up first, check out this cute little welcome spring sign that I got at Dollar Tree. It's really cute. I don't have to do hardly anything to it, but I do want to frame it out. So I'm going to use some of this nautical rope from the Dollar Tree. I like to add a little bit of thickness to Dollar Tree signs because they're so thin. And I find that a nice rope frame just does the trick. It gives it a little bit more thickness. So all I'm going to do to this sign is just hot glue that nautical rope around all 4 edges, and it's such an easy way to frame something out without having to cut any wood or anything like that. And I was trying to decide what to do with that hanger. I do end up leaving the hanger in the same spot, but just reversing like where the twine is in there so that it will hang flat against my wall. So just gluing all those edges down. The only thing I don't love about the sign is welcome and spring have glitter on them. And I just don't dig it. But it's very little. But to fix that, I like to tone it down a little bit. So I did go over it with matte Mod Podge. I think it just takes away some of the little sparkle glitz to it. But totally optional step. And here I am going to change out the hanger, just because the rope was kind of in the way of the existing hanger. So I'm just going to take some twine. The hole is pretty little on these. You'll kind of have to use the skinny twine from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to string that up. And we have our first spring DIY. I told you these were going to be easy. I tried to keep all of these DIYs under 5 minutes. So if you're short on time, but you want to give your house a dose of spring with some inexpensive supplies, these are the projects for you. I'm just going to burn off any extra fibers on that rope, and this is how the welcome spring sign looks in my home. I think it's so pretty. I love the colors. I love the little blue truck. Just my style. Okay, up next I have 2 more DIYs for you, and I'm going to use one of these little hanging signs from the Dollar Tree, and then 2 of these little kind of boxy signs from the Dollar Tree as well. Now I'm just going to take the little hanging sign apart and figure out which ones I want to use. I was thinking about doing both watering cans, but I decided to mix it up and use 1 watering can and 1 flower. Now, I just want to attach those to the front of those little flowery signs that I got at the Dollar Tree as well. But they also have some writing on there and a little white oval. So to cover that up, I'm just going to use some scrap burlap that I had laying around. And I am just going to cut a square of burlap to cover up most of the writing in that white space. Yes, you could still see the words through that, but once you get the little wood cutout on there, you're not going to see it. But I love these signs. They're the perfect little spring sign with the pink flowers all over. And these weren't necessarily spring signs. They were just in with their pictures and stuff like that at Dollar Tree. And so just using Mod Podge to glue that burlap down. We're going to do the same thing for the other DIY number 3. And so I'm just kind of using the first one as a guide so that they'll kind of be symmetrical and cutting another square of that burlap. I like to get the burlap at Walmart by the yard. I find that's the cheapest way for me to get it. And when I do Mod Podge that on, I try to do a really thick coat so that it is secure. And I also Mod Podge on top of the burlap. Now, on the little flower and the watering can, of course, there's some of that Dollar Tree glitter, but they're just around the edges. So I'm going to go over it with that matte Mod Podge again to try to tone that down and kind of go all over so you can't see where I started and stopped. And these don't really have an up or a down. You can kind of do them whichever way you want. I'm trying to cover up that little white oval which is still kind of sticking out a little bit on the edges. And I'm just going to attach that to the burlap with hot glue. And I'm going to do the same thing with the little pink flower. And these DIYs were so easy and they look so springy. So there's DIY number 2 and DIY number 3 done. We are going. This is how they look in my house. I kind of staggered them in an arrangement that I did on the wall for spring. And I love the pinks and the flowers. So springy. Okay, the next DIY, I'm going to use one of these calendars, the Farm Fresh calendar from Dollar Tree, and a thrift find. This was like a piece of wood that had wood burning on it. And it had somebody's name on the back, so I really quickly covered that up with some paint so that you couldn't read that. And there's also wood burning on the back, like some initials. So I'm trying to paint that, fill that up with a little bit of spackle as well. And I am going to attach a calendar page to the back of this wood piece, this tree slice. The wood carving on the back is on the back. It's someone else's piece of art. I couldn't bring myself to cover up somebody else's art. I couldn't do that, right? So I am using this cute little bicycle page for the calendar, and I think it's so springy. And I just drew around the edges of the wood piece, and I'm going to cut out that calendar page. It's not a perfect oval, but it's pretty close to being able to cover that. There is an area at the bottom. It's kind of cut off here, but that there wasn't a picture. So I do go in with that white paint and just finish painting like the oval for the background. That way any of the areas around the edges that are exposed, it'll all kind of blend in with that cute little calendar page. I bought so many calendars for this year from Dollar Tree, and I often forget to use them. It's such an easy way to DIY. I'm just going to do like a sawtooth hanger on the back before we get any further. Just one that I can just hammer in really easily. And then we are going to Mod Podge the calendar page on. I'm just going to do a very thin coat of Mod Podge so that I don't get a lot of bubbles in my calendar page. And then I'm going to use my brayer to smooth that out. If you do get bubbles, don't worry. They usually go away on their own in a couple of days. And then I'm going to dry that real quick with my heat gun. And once I get it good and smooth, I just go over with another thin coat of Mod Podge to seal this project down. And now you can kind of see there at the bottom where the image wasn't quite long enough. So to fix that, I thought we would do just like a simple little bow. So I'm using some pastel gnomes plaid ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and some burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree, and kind of scoping out where I would need a bow to be, about what size it needs to be. And then I needed something else, so I decided to use just a piece of that burlap ribbon from the Dollar Tree as well, just cutting it in half because it's a little too thick. And we're just going to do a very easy expo with a little zip tie. That's what they're called. And I made it a little longer than I needed it to be, but that's okay because I can always trim it, but I can't make it longer, right? So just kind of arranging that on there. And that's going to be perfect to cover up the bottom part where there is no calendar page and add a little pizzazz to this DIY. I love finding stuff like this at the thrift store because it's such an inexpensive way to make a project more interesting. If I would have Mod Podged this onto a square, or it wouldn't look quite as interesting as it does with this. But you could also do this. This would look really good if you had just a plain circle sign or whatever you've got. I just love the little bicycle picture with the flowers in the basket. So I hot glued the bow down and trimmed it to size. And then I'm going to use some of these wildflowers from the Dollar Tree to decorate the bow a little bit. And I'll match the pink flowers, or doing a lot of pink today for these DIYs. And I'm just going to attach those to the expo with a little bit of hot glue and just kind of arrange them how I think looks good. I used just like 2 little ends of that and trimmed them, but then I go in and use the little extra pieces as well. Just look like some pink flowers flowing out of the sign, kind of like the pink flowers are flowing out of that little bicycle basket. And that's all there is to this DIY. I love how this turned out. Oh, nope, one more step. I do a very light distress with some ivory acrylic paint, just very lightly, and that really added a little extra touch to it. This is how it looks in my display, and I think this might be one of my favorite projects that I did today. Look how pretty, and that distressing really brought it out and made it not look like a calendar page. Okay, our next 5-minute DIY. I got one of these little pink Easter basket bags from the Dollar Tree. And I'm just going to remove the little flower that was on the front. You could leave it on there if you wanted. But I'm just going to use my heat gun to try to remove that. And I want this to look like a reef basket kind of, and not like a little girl's bag. So the first thing I'm going to do is cut off the tags and the straps on the little bag until we have a little basket. The problem is it's flat. See how flat it is? Way too flat. So I thought I could use a Dollar Tree ruler to kind of provide some structure to this bag so that it will stay open. So I just go in and kind of measure about how tall the bag is. And there's plenty on that one ruler to cut 2 pieces, 1 for each side. And then be careful if you do this part with the hot glue because it'll come right straight through the bag. I kind of put it in there quickly and push it down on my silicone mat. And but you want to be really careful because it would be really easy to burn yourself on this step because you really kind of have to let it dry before you let go of it. Otherwise, it'll kind of pop off that material. So just gluing the second one on the other side, and that really helped. It like totally kept the little basket open so that we can fill it with flowers. So I am just cutting one of the big floral foam pieces from the Dollar Tree into some sizes that will fit in there nicely. See how good it stays open now with the rulers on the side. And I want to make a little flower basket. So I'm going to cover that foam with just some reindeer moss from the Dollar Tree. And then I think that before I get any further, I probably should worry about a hanger. So I'm just going to use a scrap piece of Dollar Tree nautical rope and hot glue that on to both sides of both of our rulers on the inside. And that gave it way better feel than the little handles that were on there before and made it look intentional, kind of like, like a reef basket, woven reef basket would look. So once I get those glued on there, we are ready to decorate this thing. So I am just going to use lots of like pinks and oranges and blues on the flowers and go ahead and arrange these. So I use my little floral scissors from the Dollar Tree. I love these things. They work so good to cut these things out. And I always buy way too many flowers from the Dollar Tree. I don't know about you. So I really tried to limit myself this spring. So I was struggling trying to find enough flowers because I want this to look really full. But I think we did good. So first I did the blue little ones. And then I'm going to use these yellow ones. And just kind of scatter them around. I really want it to look like just assorted wildflowers for spring. And so that's all we're going to do. We're going to cut them and just arrange those nicely. I really love how this DIY turned out. It really adds a touch of spring to my house, even though I'm a little early. But you guys like early, right? And then I'm going to use this pink one, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm trying to use every flower off of them so that I don't have any more scrap flowers laying around because I have so many flowers. I have a flower problem. And arrange those around as well. And I really want it to be big and thick. I decided I don't like the yellow. I don't know why. So I decided to replace it with some of these orange daisies. So everywhere I had a yellow, I replaced it with an orange. I think I just didn't really use any yellows in any of the rest of my DIYs today, so it just kind of stood out to me for some reason. And I kind of like the juxtaposition of the daisies because I want it to be like all different kinds of flowers. So replacing those in there. And then I want it to look like super full. And so I decided to add some greenery too. I had this left over from something with just the greenery on it. And so I'm just going to pull the greenery up to the top of those little pieces and add those as well. And this gives me the perfect final touch. I have a really full like wall basket of all different kinds of wildflowers. I really love how this DIY turned out as well. This might be my second favorite. Yeah, probably. I just love how colorful it is. Now I wanted a little finishing touch, and I got this little bicycle ornament on clearance at the Target dollar spot this year. And it's a little blue bicycle, and it's perfect. And it kind of goes in with the bicycle in our last DIY. I love a bicycle for spring. So I'm just kind of figuring out where on the little wreath basket I want my little bicycle to be and cut a little hole because there's a pedal on there. And I'm just going to attach that to the front of our basket with just a little bit of hot glue. And it was the perfect little finishing touch. And I'm so glad I got to use that little bicycle. I knew I could use it for something, especially for spring. And this is how the little flower basket looks on the wall. I love all the flowers, the colors, and the rope. And it totally doesn't look like a little girl's purse. Okay, our next DIY. I wanted to do something with this wood flower piece that I got at the Dollar Tree. And so I'm going to use one of these bandanas that I got from the Dollar Tree to make it nice and colorful. And it was very transparent, the bandana. So I was afraid you were going to be able to see the wood color through it. So I'm just going to go over the whole wood flower with just some white acrylic paint just to brighten that up. Then I'm going to go over it with a thick layer of Mod Podge because we're going to glue on that fabric. And I just take this bandana and lay it on top. This came with a 2-pack. And neither one of these are spring things, just kind of things you find in the normal aisles at the Dollar Tree. And this was like with our clothing stuff, and the wood flower was with just the crafter square. Once I get it on there, I'm going to go over the top with another coat of Mod Podge and then dry that. Now I'm going to have to go around and trim off all the excess fabric. You could draw the flower shape onto your fabric and cut it out first. It's completely up to you. If you do it like this, just be sure you have some really good sharp fabric scissors, which these are. I do need to sharpen them though. I do find I have a little bit of trouble cutting unless I'm in the sweet spot. And I'm just going to carefully try to trim as close to that wood flower as I can. And I love the flowers on this bandana. I was so glad that I was able to find something to use it on. And I always like the texture of like gluing fabric to wood projects. I really love how it turns out. So there's our little basic flower shape. I'm going to go around the edges with just a sandpaper block just to fray any excess fabric that's over the edges and make it look a little bit more rustic. Now for the center of our flower, I thought burlap would be good. And so I'm just going to use one of those little buckets from the Dollar Tree for a circle and draw out a circle on my burlap with just a Sharpie and cut that out because, girl, like cutting a circle is so hard. Even when you draw it out, you're still like, this doesn't look that circular anymore. The only problem is that you could see through it and you could see that like floral pattern through it. So I decided that I should line it. I'm just going to use some white craft fabric from the Dollar Tree and just Mod Podge that to our burlap and so that you can't see through it like you could before. Just with some Mod Podge under and over the burlap and then dry that together. And then again, I just have to cut a circle and we have the perfect little center for our flower DIY. I picked up this cotton white fabric the other day thinking it was polyester. So I'm glad that I have some projects to use in it because polyester works for sublimation, but cotton, not not so much. So just trimming that up, and we are ready to attach it. Since it's kind of thick now, I just go ahead and attach it with some hot glue. But you could totally use Mod Podge for this step as well. And then I'm going to use the same existing hanger and a piece of twine. I just got to repoke a hole through the fabric. I like to use one of those little Cricut weeders. And I'm just going to string some of that Dollar Tree twine back through, tie a simple knot, and we have a nice little hanger for our flower. I did find that it needed one more thing though, so I'm going to use some of this thicker twine. This is the kind that you get in a big spool at Walmart, and I'm just burning off the excess fibers because it's a little messy. And we're just going to frame out this flower with that twine using hot glue. And I think this gave a little bit more, depth, made it a little thicker because I don't like the thin stuff, right? And gave it a nice finishing touch. Kind of ties it in a little bit with some of the other projects that we've done today with the rope or the twine. So this was our project number 6. We are rolling. We have one more 5-minute spring DIY using supplies from the Dollar Tree. And I hope you're enjoying these videos. If you are, please take the time to hit the like button below. And when you're done watching, you can leave a comment of your favorite project. I would really appreciate it. And this is how the flower looks in my hallway. Okay, up next is this watering can. I got this at the Target dollar spot for $3. I couldn't find any metal ones at the Dollar Tree, so dollar spot it is. And I thought it would be so easy to fill this with flowers. It's the perfect color. I'm just going to do a little wood Jenga block in the bottom just to make my foam a little higher. And using one of those little round foam pieces from the Dollar Tree, we're going to go in here with some pink peonies. I just covered the foam with a little bit more of that reindeer moss, and I'm going and cutting all of the peonies. I actually used one of these peonies just with a nail on the wall to kind of go in with my spring displays you'll see here in the final reveal. But I'm going to use the rest here. And then some of these hydrangeas. These are a beautiful blue color. They kind of like match in with that pretty blue little watering can, which is so cute. It has a little snail on it. I do turn it the other direction and end up decorating it just a little bit, but you could totally leave it with just the snail. The snail's cute as well. And I'm just going to alternate those pretty blue flowers all in here. And it's a little bit too just pink and mint blue, so I go in with a different shade of blue with some of these taller flowers too, so that some of these can just kind of poke out above those. It was looking a little too soft, and I really think that gave it the final touch, but you could do any kind of flowers or wildflowers that you can think of, and this is how it looks. Now, the final touch, I thought I would use one of these pretty little flower stickers from the Dollar Tree, and you really can't get any easier than this for an embellishment. I'm just going to peel it and stick it to the center of our little watering can, and this is how this little 5-minute spring DIY turned out. I think it is so cute. Isn't this adorable? Okay, thanks for tuning in, everyone. Are you ready for the final reveal? All right, here we go. Thanks for watching.
Always think of you when spring comes, like it's something in the air at that time. Don't know why. Always dream of you when spring comes. It's like the heat on my skin takes me back to the time met you on a Friday, halfway out at the door of the club, playing soul on the weekends, stayed in bed till Wednesday, fell in love with you right there and then. I was young, couldn't see that. Leather jacket though